After years of having arguably the worst tight end room in the NFL, I think the Panthers might have finally figured it out. Let's talk about it right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, the part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday as we continue into offseason mode here on the show. But in a couple weeks, we're back to Monday through Friday and back to being your team every day, which is our motto here, of course, on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter or Blue Sky at Julian Council, where you can hit me up with any of your questions that you have this offseason about your Carolina Panthers. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. We're back once again, breaking down the position groups ahead of the 2025 season here in Carolina. Last week, we talked about Bryce Young and the quarterbacks. Can we see the same Bryce Young we saw in the final 9 games of last season, all of this upcoming season? Running backs, the duo of Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle. Is it the best tandem in the NFL? And in the wide receiver room, I cannot wait to see these guys get to action this upcoming season. So many storylines in that position group. But today, let's focus in on the Panthers tight ends. And this has been one of the worst tight end rooms in the NFL since really Greg Olsen left after the 2019 season. That 2020 offseason that broke all of our hearts, coinciding, of course, with the COVID-19 pandemic. So not ideal to watch Cam Newton be allowed to seek a trade for Luke Kuechly to decide to retire Greg Olsen heading to Seattle. Even, hell, Colin Jones left that offseason. Just a trying offseason for all Panther fans back there in 2020. And it's taken a while for the Panthers to get their tight end room to a position where now I believe it could be a strength heading forward. Maybe not this season, but looking at the top 3 that they have on the roster now, and Tommy Tremble, who re-signed a deal this offseason. You have JT Sanders heading into his second year, and then the rookie 5th-round selection from Notre Dame, Mitchell Evans. I like that trio of tight ends in this Panthers room and think that they could be really good for them moving forward. But let's focus on JT Sanders start off today's show. As last year, when the Panthers were sitting there, the beginning of day 3, 4th round of the 2024 NFL draft, I wanted to see them get a tight end. They had not addressed that position at all last offseason. Tommy Tremble was coming back, Ian Thomas was coming back, and they had not done anything that I felt like was going to move the position forward that season in 2024 and then moving forward into the future. And then they finally did that by taking JT Sanders in the 4th round to start up day 3. And that instantly became my favorite pick of the 2024 draft class for the Panthers. And looking at last season, I was proven right based off of my exuberance for that selection because he had 33 receptions on 43 targets, 342 yards, and a touchdown at a 51.2 receiving success rate and a 76.7 catch percentage. He ranked 2nd among rookie tight ends with the 33 receptions and 342 yards, only behind, of course, Brock Bowers, who was outstanding last year for the Raiders, ahead of Theo Johnson, who was someone people had talked about maybe Carolina would have been interested in last year in the draft. And looking at tight ends, you look at just pass catchers overall in the NFL among the 2024 rookie class, he was 15th in receiving yards among all those rookies. And matter of fact, Carolina had 3 guys in the top 15 in receiving yards among rookies last year. You have Xavier Legette, Joan Coker ranking 10th and 11th respectively, and then Sanders at 15th. Only Tampa Bay had 2 players in the top 15, that being Jalen McMillan, the rookie from Washington, and then Bucky Irving, the running back from Oregon. So only one true pass catcher. Now, Bucky's going to be a pass catcher for Tampa Bay, but we're talking about just like receivers. That's what Carolina has. 3 young guys that stepped up last year and made waves, and JT Sanders is, of course, a part of that. He had inarguably the best receiving season for a tight end since Greg Olsen departed. And I have put these numbers out to y'all over the last couple of years, just looking at the tight end production, really lack thereof production since Greg Olsen left. You look at 2020, the whole group had 27 receptions, 204 yards, and 2 touchdowns. JT Sanders did that by himself last year, exceeded those totals outside of touchdowns, of course. 38 receptions, 368 yards, and a touchdown in 2021. JT Sanders very close to doing that his own self last year. 2022, it got progressively better. 50 receptions, 517 yards, 3 touchdowns from the group. Then 2023, 59 receptions and 561 yards, 4 touchdowns. And last year, collectively, the Carolina Panthers tight end room had 60 receptions, 595 yards, 3 touchdowns, the best production that they've gotten out of the tight end room since Greg Olsen's final year in 2019. Now, you just look at JT Sanders' season last year, it was a little bit of a roller coaster, which is kind of to be expected for any rookie, but especially a rookie tight end having to come in who certainly had a long way to go as a run blocker, just a blocker in general, was known as a really good pass catcher. And you talk about, I bring up the fact that he was second among rookies last year in receptions and receiving yards and only behind Brock Bowers. That was the same case in college. His final 2 years there on the 40 acres and Austin at Texas. He was only behind Brock Bowers in production among tight ends in college football those last 2 years that he was there. But he had to come in last season, and Tommy Tremble had an injury issue during training camp. Ian Thomas, the survivor, no longer with us. He's in Las Vegas. He's still alive. He's not with us here in Carolina. He was also dealing with an injury. And then Jordan Matthews, he was still transitioning from having been a wide receiver to a tight end. So he's an old head in the room, but not necessarily a guy you wanted to rely upon at that tight end spot throughout the season. So JT came in week 1 against New Orleans, and he had to drink out of a fire hose and figure it out. And he really struggled his first 3 weeks, as PFF gave him a 39.2 grade across those first 3 weeks of the season. That was 79th among 83 tight ends. He only had 3 receptions on 3 targets for 12 yards. His run blocking really struggled, 49.1 grade. His pass blocking, even worse, 36.0 pass blocking grade. But as Tommy got healthier and as Ian also became available, and just the experience of getting to play the tight end position at the NFL level across weeks 4 to 12, you started to see the growth and the potential of JT Sanders, where he had a 61.6 PFF grade during that period of time. That was 47th out of 98 tight ends in the NFL. He had 26 receptions on 31 targets, which goes to that robust catch percentage that he had last season, 76.7. He had 290 yards and a touchdown. His run blocking grade improved drastically. He had a 74.3. That was the 5th best in the NFL among tight ends. His pass blocking grade also was much better, a 64.9 pass blocking grade. And then in the first half against Kansas City, he's balling out. He's making some great contested catches. Then he falls wrong on his neck and gets carted off. A scary scene at Bank of America Stadium. Fortunately, he was good to go, but wouldn't miss the next week of the season. And then once he came back, he wasn't the same guy. Looking at the final couple weeks of the season, weeks 14 to 18, had a 43.4 PFF grade. That was 86th out of 92 tight ends, 4 receptions on 8 targets and 40 yards. Now, 5 of those 8 targets and 3 of those receptions and 35 of those yards all came in week 18 on the road in that overtime win against Atlanta. So he finally started to feel like himself again in the final week. The only problem was the season was over and he was not able to carry over the momentum that we had seen. But his pass blocking grade continued to be strong, even when he came back at a 72.6. Run blocking grade regressed to 52.9. But overall, he really showed you the kind of growth that you wanted to see from someone who had a big question as far as, was he an all-around tight end, and could he be an all-around tight end, or would he just be more of just a pass catcher who had to take off the field in certain situations as far as pass blocking or run blocking goes? And I think that should not necessarily be that big of a question moving forward. And the big question really for him was, would he take a step nutritionally and with his body physically to be able to play more snaps and be able to really take on a role as a top tight end in this room? And Dave Canales, he talked about this during OTAs a couple weeks ago, that he told all of his rookies heading into the offseason back in January that this would be a different experience for them. It's not going to be like college where there's mandatory workouts and early morning runs and all of that. No, you got to figure it out yourself. You have to be a professional. And JT took that message and listened to him. And this is what Dave Canales had to say a couple weeks ago during OTAs. He said, quote, JT heard those messages, took it seriously, and he really came back in such great shape. I'm proud of him for taking those steps, and it makes me feel confident about him going into the summer, having a plan for his prep, and looking for a big year out of him. And Dave said this also at the end of mandatory minicamp, that this is not a vacation coming up here the next couple of weeks. You need to continue to stay in shape, to work out, and all of that. And of course, guys are going to take some time away, get to a beach, see some family and friends, but have to stay in shape. And JT Sanders is someone, just based off of the work he did between January to whenever, March or April, whenever the offseason program began, he was in the building. He was there. He was taking care of himself. And Joe Person of The Athletic had a great article about JT Sanders and his growth and the expectations that Dave Canales now has for him. And JT, he dropped 10 pounds of weight this offseason. He's hired a chef to go out there, make him some healthier meals. He was a guy he said last year, if it was 11 o'clock, he was hungry, he'd get some Domino's. Now he's opening up his meal prep and eating some steak, eating some veggies, staying healthy. And that's awesome to hear. He apparently went out to California to work out with Bryce Young. And he said that Bryce works his tail off in the gym, not just throwing, but in the gym, he works his tail off, has some intense workouts. So he was out there working with him and Jalen Coker. I'm excited about this guy. I was last year when they took him, and I was excited as he was beginning to progress there in the latter part of the season. Had a neck injury, hated to see that. So glad that he was able to come back and play the last couple of weeks of the season. And I sat up here in the show and wondered, okay, JT Sanders, like, where is he offensively, involvement-wise? And he talked about this in an article that it was kind of like having whiplash, where it's hard to move your neck and be able to be a receiver if you're coming back from that kind of injury. So now fully healthy, lost some weight, opportunity there as Tommy Tremble is injured, and we're not quite sure when he'll be ready. And we'll talk about that momentarily. I'm expecting a big jump in year 2 for JT Sanders. Him, Leggett, Coker, all three of those guys showed promise last season, and I expect that all three of them potentially, Coker's a question mark, could take a necessary leap here in year 2 in 2025. Speaking of Tommy Tremble, had back surgery and could be out to start off the season, could be back. Not quite sure. When will he be ready? We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the 9th inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Tommy Tremble is back in Carolina for a 5th season, agreeing to a 2-year, $16 million contract with $8 million guaranteed earlier on this offseason. That was a part of my offseason to-do list. Wanted to see Carolina bring him back after his first 4 years. His rookie deal was up, and I've been a fan of Tommy Tremble since day one. I have never had the expectations that he was going to go from Notre Dame, where they did not ask him to be a pass catcher, to the NFL, where the tight end position is one of the toughest to come in to the league and to have immediate success. Now, there are some guys who are different, like Brock Bowers, but most of these guys, it takes them time. And I don't think people understand just how long it can take a guy to come in and to really make an impact at that position. And you're not always asked to go and just catch the football. Like, your main job is to block. And if you cannot block, whether it be pass blocking or run blocking, you will not play. And that's kind of the same at wide receiver. Yes, your job is to catch the ball, but also you got to be able to block. And if you're not going to do that, you cannot be on the field. You're not a team player. You have to do your 111. So I do think a lot of times people maybe underestimate how much you have to do in order to be put in a position to where they want you to be a part of the offensive play calls as far as a receiver. But that was never my intention Well, I don't think not my intention, but their intention and my expectation for Tommy Tremble coming to Carolina, because he did not do that at Notre Dame, and I just did not expect that to be the case in Carolina. But he has been a really solid blocker for them, and even secondarily, he's been a decent pass catcher when they've called upon him. And now there's kind of a question of, will Tommy Tremble be ready to go this upcoming season once week 1 rolls around on the road in Jacksonville? And that's been called into question. There's been varying messages coming out of the Panthers camp. Now we go back to OTAs. I think it was late May when Dave Canales spoke to the media and told us that apparently Tommy Tremble, he had back surgery the week prior and that he was expected to be ready for the start of training camp. But then a Panthers spokesperson, speaking to Joe Person of The Athletic, clarified, saying this: Tommy Tremble will be rehabbing for start of training camp. He's expected to start on the PUP list, physically unable to perform list. No timeline for his return to game action, but not expected to be season ending. So if he starts off the year on PUP, he misses the first 4 weeks of the season. And then you're looking at a situation where it's a second-year player in JT Sanders who's in the best shape of his life, and then Mitchell Evans, 5th-round selection out of Notre Dame, a rookie, being your top 2 tight end options. So in that case, I would imagine waiver wire cut down, just free agency in general still going on, that maybe they want to bring in a vet to supplement in the meantime why Tommy Tremble is out. But then we find out a week later on June 3rd that maybe he will be ready to go. As Dave Canales said this quote, "It doesn't look like Tommy's going to be ready to go at training camp." So that's the key thing. He said at, I think he meant by training camp, because the words do matter there. But again, he said it doesn't look like Tommy is going to be ready to go at training camp. I don't know specifically what the timeline is. There's a window in there. He could get back to us at some point as we are going to the preseason and camp. But right now we have to take it one day at a time with the surgery. He feels great, but there's a lot that goes into making sure that he's right. And so we'll kind of just take it day to day as we go into camp. And Dave was later asked, why now? Why not earlier? And apparently Tommy would feel really good when he was out there in the field. Then he go back, his back would tighten up on him. And it was something where they gave him an option. He took the option, and now we kind of wait and see. And again, I wish he would have said bye instead of at training camp, because I don't really know what he's trying to say. Because is he going to be ready to go at the start of training camp, or he'll be ready at some point in training camp where he's not going to be ready at all? It's just one of those things that's going to be up in the air and something that we'll have to monitor. And Tommy did struggle with, I think, a calf injury and a back injury last year, which caused him to miss 5 games. And he honestly kind of had a career year. He tied his career high in receptions last season with 23. He had a career high in receiving yards of 234 plus 2 touchdowns. He's the 57th highest graded tight end according to PFF among those who qualified last year from the tight end position in the NFL. Solid player. The vet in the room, you'd like for him to be in there to come help bring JT Sanders along, and of course bring Mitchell Evans along. Now that's what JT's going to have to do, and what Tommy can still do from the sideline. But he could also be rehabbing a lot when he's out there once training camp gets going. So we'll find out soon enough whether he'll be ready to go. And all, I don't know, and likely, but hopefully, of course, for Carolina's sake, for Tommy's sake, that he is good to go by week 1. If he misses the preseason and training camp, never ideal, of course, because you want to be in shape when we're ready to go. But if he is good to go week 1, that's what's important. But now calls into question, will Mitchell Evans be ready to step up from day 1? And like, while Tommy Tremble's out, going to be a great time to get to know who Mitchell Evans is. And we talked about this with the host of Locked On Irish, Tyler Wojak, back in April, or May, I guess it was, who was Mitchell Evans. And he talked about Mitchell Evans was somebody who came in, had to primarily be a blocking tight end his first couple of years at Notre Dame. Then he came his junior year and just exploded, was their top receiving option before tearing his ACL, but then came back last year. Took him some time, but then got back to being more healthy, and it helped him into the national title game. And being a year removed from the year where he came back off of an injury, we may get to see now the best version of Mitchell Evans coming into his rookie year in the NFL. And just looking at his numbers at Notre Dame, 72 receptions, 843 yards, and 4 touchdowns combined his final 2 seasons with the Irish. Again, he was their leading receiver in 2023 when their wide receivers were terrible at Notre Dame that season, were better last year as they went on the way to a national title, lost against Ohio State. But he was like their only guy, and then they lost him. So good player. And I've talked about this. Like, I love Notre Dame tight ends. I love them. You go back to Kyle Rudolph, got Tyler Eifert, who've come out recently. Who's the guy up in Chicago? Like, there's been a lot recently. Michael Mayer. There's been a lot of dudes who've come out of Notre Dame who've come into the NFL, and they have been plus receiving options at the tight end position. And now Carolina has one. And I wonder if he's their most complete tight end because he doesn't really come in with a lot of questions other than, like, are you physically healthy? Can you come in and immediately make an impact? And maybe there could be some questions just athleticism wise. I don't think so. With Mitchell Evans, like, he may be their most complete tight end, and to have him and JT ready to go, like, that may be a better duo than having Tommy and JT, just because I think there's more upside there as a pass catcher. Now, again, tight end is a difficult position to come in and immediately contribute at the NFL level, but still, they're going to need him, it seems pretty clearly, to come out ready to go, start a training camp, and then possibly week 1 against Jacksonville and help them out. So Mitchell Evans, excited about that selection. 2 straight years the Panthers go and get 2 tight ends who I really liked and think that they can make a really nice tandem moving forward. And Tommy Tremble, it's a 2-year deal. They can probably get out of it after this year. We'll see how that plays out. I would still like to see Tommy like stay as long as he continues to be a plus blocker for them. I'm cool with Tommy Tremble being in Carolina as long as they feel that it is necessary. So Tommy Tremble, we're going to be monitoring that situation, seeing who's ready to go. But in the meantime, Mitchell Evans, you're up. Can you get it done? How many tight ends will the Panthers keep? Kind of tricky to figure out because of the health situation. We'll break it down here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Let's try to figure out the roster math for the tight end room heading into roster cutdown day at the end of August. I honestly feel like it's going to come down to whether Tommy Tremble is healthy or not. If he's able to be out there for training camp in the preseason and is healthy enough, then like he's obviously on the roster. So is JT Sanders and so is Mitchell Evans. Like those 3, without question, will be on the active roster this season. Just will all 3 of them be on the initial 53-man roster, or will Tommy have to be on PUP and miss the first 4 weeks? If that happens, then that's going to change the roster math as you have right now in that tight end room behind those top 3, James Mitchell, Bryce Pierre, and then Dominique Daphne. And it's hard to project, too, how many guys that they want to keep, because last year they kept 3. They kept Tommy Tremble, Ian Thomas, JT Sanders, and then eventually they brought back Jordan Matthews. He played week 1. They also had Felipe Franks. But those are the top 3 guys that they had last year, in Ian, Tommy, and in JT. But because they had so many injuries, where Ian Thomas only played 5 games, Tommy Tremble missed, I think, like 6 games last season. JT missed 1 game, and then they had some other guys that they brought in and out. And then Felipe Franks played a lot of games because he was a special teams ace for them. It was kind of hard to figure out how many tight ends they truly wanted to have out on the field. And I do think that they probably would like to carry 4, but that 4th guy, much like the 7th guy at receiver or like the 5th guy at linebacker, has to play special teams. And like that's what Felipe Franks did. So when they were healthy, they carried 4. 3 of their main guys in Ian, in Tommy, and in JT, and then Felipe Franks, who was a special teamer. Wasn't there to play tight end, was there just to be a gunner on special teams, and did a great job of that. Probably should have been a Pro Bowler at that position last year. But either way, I think they would like that 4. It just comes down to who among the other 3, and James Mitchell, Bryce Pierre, and Dominique Daphne, can be a special teamer for them. And I look at it like roster bubble. There's only one guy I'm putting there right now, and that is James Mitchell. He was a draft pick of the Detroit Lions a couple of years ago. He came off an ACL tear in his senior year at Virginia Tech and came in, was able to make a slight impact as a rookie in 2022. 2023 had a decent season for the Lions and broke his hand, had surgery, and then was cut from the team last year, was on their practice squad, but then eventually was not on the practice squad and then signed a futures contract deal for Carolina back in January. And I do think he's probably someone who has a really good shot at making the roster. I just had to look, though, at special teams and look back at his first 2 years in Detroit where he played in 22 and 23. He played 38% of special team snaps available to him his first year, and then 35%, and then 0 last season as he was not healthy. So he's at least shown the ability to do so, and that would give him a great opportunity to make the team if Tomby is not ready to go. Even a better opportunity, but I would think that if they're going to keep 4 and they're not going to add another veteran, that would be James Mitchell's job to lose at this point in time. As far as Bryce Pierre, Dominique Daphne, practice squad options or UFL bound. Like, that's the way I'm looking at it. Now, Dave did say, at least referencing how the roster number is going to work there with the wide receiver position, that preseason games are going to matter. So for guys like Bryce Pierre, Dominique Daphne, James Mitchell, preseason games are going to matter for them. I just think that Mitchell, of those 3, far more likely to be on the roster because he has been on an active roster in the NFL, has been able to contribute as a pass catcher, as a run blocker, and pass blocker, whereas these 2 guys just do not have the NFL experience at this point in time. So I'm looking at those 3, Tremble, Sanders, Evans, clearly on the roster, and then Mitchell, good shot, really dependent upon his special teams ability and also how things play out with Tommy Tremble and his back and his overall recovery heading into training camp, the preseason, and of course, leading up to week 1 and roster cut down day. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right now as we're in off-season mode. Again, you all subscribe and follow the show for free over on YouTube, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council. No mailbag right now, but you can still hit me up in my DMs or just at me with any questions that you have about the Carolina Panthers. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And on Wednesday, we're back, and we're talking about the offensive line, splitting it up, looking at the offensive tackles. Ike Ekwonu, could he get a big-time deal this offseason? Taylor Moton, is this the final stand for Timo? We'll talk about all that and more on Wednesday here on Locked On Panthers.